Good evening, Patriots. It is Monday night, and on Monday night, PJNET traditionally does SOT, the hashtag support our troops, and we are always scanning the horizon for members of our military, either active or formerly active, so that we can honor them. And I kind of ran into somebody today, and he goes by the name Tug, and I'm going to ask him about that. But Tug is a veteran of the United States Navy, so let me bring Tug by way of Skype into our marvelous red carpeted studios. He is in a remote bunker at an undisclosed location, and so that no artillery strikes can be called in against him. Tug, what's the name Tug all about?
Well, I wish there was a great story to go along with it. My name is Jerry Coward. Tug is a nickname that my wife gave me when we were dating, and then after we were married. And it was just a silly pet name. And a couple of my buddies heard her call me that, and they're like, "What did she just call you?" And so then it began. So for 17 years now, almost 17 years, I've been known as Tug rather than Jerry. The only people left that call me Jerry are my mom and my wife, Laura.
So there's no naval or maritime significance to the name whatsoever. It's just a name, just a nickname. Okay. Well, when we were talking earlier, you went into the Navy not because you had a full ride scholarship to the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis. There's a different story for you.
Right. Yeah. No.
You turned down a deal from West Point, I'm sure.
No, they never called. Hey, believe me, I called them. They didn't call back.
Okay.
No, I come from a military family. Both my grandfathers were World War II veterans. Certainly proud of them, and I was the first grandson to join the Navy. But so I had wanted to be in radio for my whole childhood. I used to create my own little radio station in my bedroom with a double cassette deck. And so I got to high school, and I talked to my guidance counselor, and I told her I wanted to be in radio, and she was like, you really can't do that. It's kind of like being a movie star. So I was like, all right. Went to college, dropped out. I'm from Northwest Georgia, a little town called Dalton.
Where they make great carpet.
They do indeed. Yes, they make a lot of it, too, and that's the only thing that's there. And I remember telling my dad I didn't want to work in a carpet mill, and he was like, well, what else are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know, but it's not that. I can guarantee it. And to make a long story short, I dropped out of college, joined the Navy, and spent 4 years in the Navy. Would have spent 20 because I loved it. I loved the Navy and did well. I made the E5 in I guess a little over 3 years. And, went in as a sleeve, had no rank at all. And then would have stayed 20, but I met my wife, Laura, and now we're married in April, 16 years.
So you got out of the Navy and you came home, walking the street, kicking a can down the road, and I guess the can rolled its way up to a radio station, and you just went in and said, I'm here? I mean, what happened?
You know what? Strangely enough, I was listening to the radio, and an ad came out. It's a little bitty small radio station in my hometown of Dalton, and they needed an afternoon news anchor. And so I called them. They invited me to come by. I was probably the only applicant, I would imagine. And they invited me by, and they had me read a couple of scripts. And they're like, have you worked in radio before? And I was like, no, I just got out of the Navy, as my resume says. And they're like, you speak well, you do a good job. So if you want the gig, it's yours.
Huh.
And it started there. And 2000, I guess, June or July in 2000, after I'd gotten out of the Navy in January.
And you've been in radio pretty much ever since.
Yeah, ever since. Yeah, so this is like my 17th.
But not in Dalton.
Not in Dalton. No. I went from Dalton to Chattanooga, Tennessee. I did nights at a big country station called US 101. Incredibly successul station. My wife got an offer for a job in Atlanta. She actually works in radio too.
Oh my gosh.
And the business manager and HR director at 680 The Fan, WCNN, the Braves Radio Network here in Atlanta. And she wanted to take the job. I had a great gig, but I wanted her to be able to take this job. It was a great opportunity for her.
Well, and it's less volatile. I mean, people don't realize if you're in radio. Now, you were an on-air personality, right?
Yeah, I still am.
All right. Now, the chances of you surviving what they call the book You just have, you live by it. The ratings can come out, and you can find yourself without a job overnight, unannounced.
Yeah, you know what? I've been fortunate. I've never ever been fired from a radio station, and I've been working for 17 years. I'm one of the few.
That's unheard of. Yeah.
Yeah, it is almost unheard of. And so there's always the goof, whenever radio people are together talking, they'll be like, every one of us been fired at some point. And I always just kind of smile and not say a word because I've been very fortunate and I've not suffered that consequence, thankfully. But anyway, so Laura gets the job here in Atlanta. We moved to where we live now, north of Atlanta in Alpharetta. And I took a job at Kicks 1015, and I just celebrated my 10th anniversary there.
Well, folks, for those of you that aren't in radio, and I was only in radio paying my way through college, but here's the deal. The Arbitron book, that's the radio equivalent of the television Nielsen ratings, come out. Pardon?
There's not an Arbitron anymore. Nielsen owns everything.
Okay, well, the ratings, in any event, you have a guy called a program director, a PD, and he decides what music plays and what doesn't play, and you do your job. And when the ratings come out, that the program director is like a coach of a football team. He gets he or she gets a free hand to program the station and appeal to the demographics. When the ratings come out, that's going to determine how much that radio station can charge for a commercial. So if they don't deliver, they are summarily and unceremoniously fired, and someone else comes in who's probably been fired from another market for the same reason. It's very much like coaching. And the new program director comes in, and if he wants to fire every on-air personality there, he or she will do so. So it's there's not a lot of job security in radio. And my experience, not a lot of money either, but I was just part-time. So, but once it gets in your blood, Tug, it's hard to get radio out. I mean, it just becomes part of your DNA.
Yeah, it has. And you know what? In many cases, you're absolutely right. But radio's been good to our family, so we can speak highly to that part of it. And but since then, I have kind of branched out. I still work at Kick, and like I said, celebrated 10 years there. I work for a marketing company as well, and we do financial radio shows. So I do about 8 shows from, Sarasota, Florida, up to Raleigh, North Carolina, Shreveport, Louisiana. I do one here in Atlanta. And so anyway, to quit boring you with all the markets, there's 8 of those. And we're working on a national platform radio show. And it's kind of in the vein of like maybe a Dave Ramsey or a Clark Howard, something like that. But testing that right now. And things are going pretty well there, too. And so I do a podcast with a guy named Mac Powell. If you're familiar with contemporary Christian music, he's the lead singer for the contemporary Christian band Third Day. They've won 4 Grammys, and sold 10 or 20 million records. They've done very, very well over the years, and so that keeps me busy. I do voiceover work on the side, and that's the one thing that in media, as you know, you got to keep your hands busy.
You have lived through an extraordinary transition in radio, media in general. We were talking earlier. Many newspapers have found themselves struggling to exist. With the advent of the internet and Google and all the things, there's so much news at our fingertips now. The local newspaper is almost a dinosaur. And in many respects, radio stations have suffered similar fate. What's your take?
Yeah, I think radio's got to do a good job of defining what it is and appealing to listeners, and specifically in the car. Right now, home listening, I would imagine, is at an all-time low. Though my family, because both my wife and I both work in radio, we still listen to the radio in the house. And, and I always enjoy listening to ball games on the radio, so I still do to this day. I got that from my dad and my grandpa. So I still do that, but you're right, and radio's got to do a good job of being relevant. They got to figure out a way to make sure they stay relevant. I think much like a small town newspaper, there'll always be a place for it, but as the marketplace continues to splinter, they got to figure out the way to appeal to the masses. They got to appeal to younger listeners, bring them in somehow. And they've got to appeal to the people that have been listening to radio for many, many years.
Well, and they're absolutely dumbfounded because in the old days when I was there, basically what a radio station did was carefully define a particular demographic and program toward that demographic. And the rule is if you try to please everybody, you wind up pleasing nobody. So formatting. Now it's broadened out, and radio stations are going to have to carve their way into the media landscape because they were unchallenged, like you said. And to this day, in the automobile, they're still almost unchallenged. But even that will be changing in the days ahead. Now, as that window closes, the terrestrial-based broadcast facilities but they have a whole vista, a whole new world opened up. And then we've got social media now competing for an audience. And I haven't seen any particular media outlet, newspaper, radio, or otherwise, adapt to the fluid nature of social media. And when instead of, they think of it as a competitor of sorts, but really it could be their best friend.
A companion, absolutely, because you can push out whatever the content is that you create. If you're a sports station, when you broadcast your shows through the day, you take the best of that content and repackage it and push it out via social media, driving people back to the website or to the app or whatever.
The unique thing, I think they really have, like I said, they just don't know what to do. I think they've missed the ball. Whether it's radio, newspaper, or television, that is a push. There's programming being pushed out at you. It's not an interactive experience, with the exception of maybe a call-in show. But now we have an opportunity where the media, radio, newspaper, whatever, the audience can actually engage with the news source in real time. This is a whole new landscape.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great thing that you bring up. Yeah, people will have to figure out with the programmers of the radio stations and the different companies. Yeah, they can figure out how to do that. But the one thing I will say about pushing out content that you create, whatever it is, if you're a sports station, it'll be sports content. If you're a country station, it'll be country content, whatever. But, much like videos on YouTube, that's not interactive either, and millions of people watch it. So it's the same idea, I think, when you take, if you have a great moment or a great interview or a great segment on your radio station, then you can push that out to followers, listeners, via social media and still get that out there. And people, if it's good content and it's content that they're interested in, they'll engage with it. Like you said, it won't be back and forth. It won't be two-way, but I don't think that's quite as important. I think that's just another example of how you can do it.
It's an opportunity. Here's the thing that I think that they've kind of missed out on because of their role in the past up until this point. The news media, and again, it doesn't matter which medium, they have an agenda setting function. They get all this news, but they have to mentally decide what do we think is important to the consuming news public. Well,
or whatever we want to make sure we get out there, because there's that too.
What's hot? One of the things that Ed Sullivan would do, he knew what was hot this week.
Yeah, but I just mean in like ideology wise too. There's often and more than what's hot. It's more about what do we want to make sure that our listeners are consuming via us to back up our thought process.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it is agenda driven today, where in the past the news was more about journalistic professionalism, and being anyway. But what's interesting is that if the media were to use social media as a way to gauge public opinion, it's if you're skilled at it, and very few people are, you can actually take the pulse of public opinion on social media. Do you see radio, television, newspapers going in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, radio stations do it every day and have been since social media has been around. We always used social media since at least the last 5 years to gauge the topics that we would spend time on when I was working on the morning show with Cadillac Jack and Dallas here in Atlanta on Kicks 101.5. We would always look at that stuff. All right, what is the trending topic? What is the topic that everybody seems to be talking about? And we would kind of bring at least some of that into our show too. So yeah, I think people are doing that part well.
It's a game changer. And well, anyway, it sounds exciting. Now, what's the future hold for Tug?
Oh gosh, man. I like where I am right now. I like being able to work in a lot of different settings. Right now, I work country radio, I work talk radio, and I'm working on a show for potentially for the Braves Radio Network. We'll see how that plays out. I've got at least the idea pitched to them, and they're interested. So that's an opportunity there. The podcast that I do with Mac Powell will continue, and hopefully we've got a potential deal with Westwood One to help us to distribute that. And then the voiceover business, I do car commercials. I do a great little furniture company called Home Decor Outlets. I do their voiceover work for them, and I'm going to continue to do that kind of stuff. And then I've got this other little cool business on the side. So my son is very athletic, loves to play ball. That's what we do all summer long. We don't take vacation like most families. We take baseball vacations. And this year, the baseball vacation takes us to Cooperstown, where my son's team will be playing this summer. And they're at the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I do these cool little intros for his baseball team. And I've partnered with the stadium announcer for the Atlanta Braves. His name is Casey Motter. And he reads all the voiceover because he's got this big booming voice. And so the kids love it because they hear the same guy that's introducing their favorite baseball players, introducing their names. And I produce it all up with zips and zaps and music and, now batting, whatever the kid's name is for the so it's amazing. And people come and ask me about it all the time. And I've never really considered making it a business. I just did it for my kid, because it takes about 3 hours to put all this stuff together for these kids. And I just do it because I love the kids and I love, the smile that they get when they're walking to the plate and their chest is all bowed out. They're going to attack the ball, And I've been asked so many times about it that I think I'm going to start marketing them.
You've worked in a live studio environment for some time and you become comfortable with it, but share with us one of the more embarrassing or funny moments in that live studio business that stands out.
Oh my Lord. There's been a bunch. So one time we had, we used to do this bit called the Homeless Pets Foundation, where we would have a guy named Dr. Good. He was a veterinarian, still is a veterinarian here in town, and he would come in, bring a homeless pet, and we adopted, I want to say it was like 10,000 over a 10-year stretch, 10,000 dogs. And so one time there was, the dog, had an accident, pooped in the floor, and Good was dropping profanity left and right. He was like, "Oh my gosh, the dog is," and look, we didn't use a delay, anything.
Yeah.
And so all of that was broadcast live, and I've never laughed so hard in my life. And I was like, "Dr. Good, shut up!" And so there was that, and there's just been numerous things like that over the years, where you just have to roll with the punches and doing funny bits, pulling pranks on people. That was always really, really fun to do. This is still some of my favorite stuff is pulling pranks.
It's very, very spontaneous. I was when I was working at 100,000 watt FM rock station here in Tallahassee. We were the flagship station for the Seminole Sports Network at that time.
Okay.
And of course, it's live, and the clock's running all the time. And of course, I'm trying to patch this out, and it's being fed to hundreds of stations around the country. You'd think they would find somebody more qualified than a part-time college student to manage that, but there I was. And of course, you got, when you go away for a commercial, you're streaming out the commercial content, the network commercial, but I'm able to hear what's being said back at the stadium. it is not fit for broadcast because that,
no.
and some of the interviews with the coaches, before you go on the air, the words, I mean, the stuff you don't hear on the radio would not. It would change your opinion of some of these wonderful people.
No doubt about it. No, I get it. I got to tell you, man, I was in the Navy, for heaven's sake, so I've heard it all and probably said it all. I've had to clean all that up in the last many, many years. But I'm not going to say I don't fail miserably most of the time. For thank the Lord that our Savior has forgiven me for that. And we'll probably have to continue because I slip up all the time. But
okay,
I get
Tug,
it, man.
you have a relationship with a contemporary Christian artist. Where are you at spiritually, and how does that influence what you do, what you don't do, and your plans? And to what extent are you able to incorporate that testimony into your professional life?
Man, I've never been shy about it. I've talked about it from the very first day on the air. I've never been afraid to mention that I'm a Christian or that I'm faithful or that Christ is my Savior and I'm a follower. Don't get me wrong, I've grown in my faith more and been able to maybe explain it better to people who ask about it, which, I mean, I'm in the deep South. I mean, I'm in, Atlanta, Georgia. So it's not quite as shocking to people when you say
it's not as dangerous there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's never been an issue for me, man. I've always been just fine with talking about it on the radio, talking about it on the podcast. Like I said, just growing in my faith has made me more comfortable in how I talk about it to people, because I hope to influence them in that way and show them why that I think being a Christian is important.
Tug, you're a great guy, and now you said your partner Mac, isn't he kind of indisposed for a while or whatever? We'd love to hear from him on we hold a live worship service here every Tuesday night, and we'd like to know more about him. Tell us a little bit.
So he has been in the contemporary Christian band Third Day for about 25 years. I think I mentioned that those guys have won 4 Grammys, been nominated 9 times, I think. And sold millions of records, and they were just in town on the Hits Deep tour with a guy named Toby Mac and Mandisa. She is a wonderful vocalist, and she was on American Idol, I believe. Then a guy named Matt Maher is on that tour as well. So just a lot of really talented people, and I'm leaving some folks out, but I think there's 7 people on the tour altogether. But so he is doing that, has done it for a long time, and we just kind of connected on, strangely enough, his independent solo country stuff. He's really, Mac is really, really into country music, and that's how he and I connected. I really never knew much about the Third Day stuff that he'd been so successful with, because that's not the music that I had listened to. And
it's almost like he's schizophrenic. He goes from one side of the spectrum to the other.
There's a lot of faithful people in country music, and they're very vocal about their faith too. Brad Paisley, Josh Turner, guys like that are very vocal about their faith and written songs about it. Like When I Get Where I'm Going, Brad Paisley, who performed with Dolly Parton, that song. Keith Urban has done incredible versions of I'll Fly Away, the old Christian hymn. So it's not that far apart, surprisingly enough.
Well, actually, Elton John, his favorite musical genre is hymns, of all things. And we need to wrap up here shortly, but you're an interesting guy, Tug. In doing this media, you get exposed to some celebrities. Who are some of the bigger, and is it intimidating? I saw you were working with Shaquille O'Neal, for example. Who are some of the names that you've brushed up against, and how do you feel about them? They ordinary people in real life?
Yeah, most of the time you'll find that once you get them away from managers and just people like that, they're just as regular a person as they can be. Shaquille O'Neal, for example, he records his podcast in the office where 680 The Fan is and Kicks 101.5, so my wife's station and my station. He records it with a guy named John Kincaid, who does afternoons on 680 The Fan. where my wife works. And yeah, Shaq is the nicest guy ever. I mean, he's just genuinely a nice guy. Not, I've never seen him with any sort of ego. He takes every picture, signs every autograph,
Really?
and he comes into the office regularly. And it just seems that nobody can get enough of him. You know, just because he's such a big personality and a big guy.
You're a big guy.
Yeah, exactly. So he's really terrific to everybody, and I've never heard anybody say anything but that. Tim McGraw is such a nice guy. He's one of the biggest guys in country music for sure. He's a big star. He's done movies, and he's done. I think he's narrating a show on CNBC that comes on around when Shark Tank comes on, which is very popular in my house. But Tim is such a nice guy. It's funny when I see him. Always, because he meets 1,000 people a day, I always reintroduce myself. Hey, Tim, good to see you. Tug from Kicks 1015. And he's said many times, which always makes me feel nice, but it's kind of funny. He's like, I only know 2 Tugs, my dad and you. And that's it. It's like occasionally I'll know of someone who will tell me they've named their dog Tug. But other than that, the only 2 that I know are you and my dad.
Well, Tug, hey, good. I'm glad we kind of ran into each other. And folks, we've put it in the chat room. You can also find out more about Tug at, guess what? Tug Cowart, TUGCOWART.com. Tug, Godspeed to you. And let's talk again sometime down the road and compare notes. And we just wish you the very best in your professional life and in your ministry. And thank you for your service in the United States Navy.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for your kindness.
All right. Have a good one.